Hey friend, Jenny Oates here. We are back with our third video in our series on embracing uncertainty. And today's topic is not going to be light and fluffy, but I don't really think this series is very light and fluffy, but it's real. It's what we're all facing. It's what we're walking through right now at this current moment in history and in our realities. And it's what we've been walking our whole lives, right? We have talked about the reality of uncertainty in our lives, and embracing uncertainty sounds light, it sounds easy. It's not easy, as you already know. And what we're going to talk about today is really the stages of grief and how embracing uncertainty involves accepting reality. And I'm going to break down these stages of grief. Maybe you've heard them before, maybe you haven't, maybe this is going to be new for you today. And if not, stick with me because I want us to take a look at the 5 stages of grief and really how they deeply impact our ability to walk through uncertainty and to get to that place of peace and acceptance. And the fruit of all of that can be a life of abundance and joy and success in so many areas of our life. Accepting and coming to that place of acceptance really is the goal of most healthy individuals. It's the goal of most therapists. It's the goal of any successfully minded people. And yet it is so much easier said than done, isn't it? It is not something that we can just snap our fingers and get to this place of acceptance. But how do they do it? How do successful people, healthy people, people that you observe that are at peace, even walking through intense, incredible storms, how do they get to that place? And I would say they have gotten there largely because they have learned how to grieve losses. And they have learned to grieve big losses and small losses. And it might sound silly to grieve a small loss, but I believe how you're grieving the small ones is how you're going to grieve the big ones. And I had a coach one time, fairly recently, I should say, who told me in response to something that I said to her. I was telling her about something that I'd done that wasn't that big of a deal, and it was small in my opinion. And she just said, Jenny, how you are in anything is how you are in everything. And that statement was one of those mic drop statements that went straight to my soul. And it has changed my life. It has caused me to notice and to pay attention to how I am in anything, because it's truly how I am in everything. In other words, how you and I show up in the small things of life, how we grieve the small things is how we will grieve the big things. Why do you think some people walking through stuff with COVID and quarantine and all the things that are being thrown at us with the uncertainties of our kids and schooling, why do some people seem to weather it so well and others don't? And that's not to say even those people are not having really, really hard and bad days. And I'll show you that as we walk through this. But their sense of peace, their sense of security, their sense of identity, their sense of well-being is still intact, even in the midst of really bad days or crying their tears. And so let's walk through that together. So let's walk through the 5 stages of grief. And the very first one is denial. This is a fun one, guys. Denial is where we are in shock. There's numbness, there's panic, and there's really a refusal to accept or acknowledge reality. And what we do in this stage is we pretend that it's not there and we try to put it all back to how it was. Aren't we living in a space right now where the conversation is, will things ever go back to normal? Is this just our new normal? Will we ever be able to go to school without masks? How will our kids make up the school that they have lost when they're required? I've got high schoolers, they're required to take these SAT tests and they just missed a quarter of their school year. There's so many things that may never go back to normal. But in this stage of denial, we believe that if we can do certain things, it can go back. Or really we're still in this denial of what really is. And so we're trying to just scramble and put things back how they were. This is where a lot of qualities in us, like obsessing and controlling, maybe repressing our feelings and stuffing them down, these are the things we tend to see in ourselves in this stage when we're in denial. And we might even find ourselves feeling crazy. We might even say it. We might say, I feel crazy. I'm so overwhelmed. I feel like I'm drowning. And the feeling of craziness is actually coming because we're lying to ourselves. You are lying to yourself about what reality is. And anytime you are lied to, and anytime you lie to yourself, anytime you don't allow yourself to see what truly is in front of you and what reality really is, it's cause for crazy making. It's what causes the crazy. So the reality itself isn't actually crazy. It's your denial of it that's making you feel that way. And denial is actually it's our soul's natural shock absorber. It's the way we have been designed and created to absorb really, really hard and painful experiences until we actually have the skills to cope with them. So the goal is to gain those coping skills, because nobody can live in denial for their whole life. But it is our way of coping until we have the skills and the resources to get through it. So that's denial. One little note on denial that I just feel is worth saying. This is a whole nother video, but one of the things that manifests the most is control. And you and I both know, maybe you don't know yet, but I'll tell you, control is an illusion. It's a fantasy. It's not real. It doesn't work. We can't control our situations. We can't control things that are happening in the world. We certainly can't control people who have their own mind and their own choices and their own feelings. People ultimately do what they want to do. They think what they want to think. They feel what they want to feel, and they're entitled to that. And they believe what they want to believe. Nothing that you or I can do can change people or can control them, really. And yet we make all these attempts. This denial phase is our attempts to control people or to control life or our situations or the school superintendent or the mayor as he's making his decisions or the president. We think we can do things that can actually control the situation, and it's all an illusion. Okay, that was fun. Denial's number one. Denial then gives way to anger. Anger is the next phase of the grief cycle. Maybe your anger in this moment is, maybe the anger is reasonable. Maybe it's really unreasonable. Maybe it's rational. Maybe it's very irrational. Maybe it's justified. Maybe it's not justified. Whatever it is, the irony of your anger in this stage is the irony of the whole thing is the longer you actually deny your situation. So you stay back in phase one, the longer you deny your situation and the reality that you're facing, the more you actually move into this low level of resentment or this undercurrent of anger, and you stay here. So denying reality will keep you in anger much, much, much longer. So there's a man that I love, Chip Dodd, in his book called The Voice of the Heart. It's a book that I highly recommend. It has been very life-giving to me, and he talks about how all feelings in the world are reduced down to 8. You may or may not agree with him. I love it. I think the way primary colors, we get all the colors of the world from our 3 colors. We get all the music notes in the world off of all the orchestras we have off of just a handful of music notes. And so it would beg to be true that all of the faces of feelings that we can express come from some core feelings. And so he not only shows that, but he talks about how every feeling, we've been so trained to believe that feelings are either good or they're bad. And his argument is they're not. They're both and. They have 2 faces. And so when it comes to anger, it was so helpful. His understanding of anger and the 2 faces of anger was so helpful for me as I walk through the grieving process in big and small ways in my life, daily, actually, weekly. He talks about these 2 faces. So there's toxic anger, just like there's toxic sides of each of the emotions. And that's where we can quickly jump to the conclusion to say, oh, anger's bad. Maybe you were raised the way I was raised, where whether it was ever actually said or not, it just felt bad. It felt really icky and dirty and not acceptable to ever show your anger. You needed to keep it in check. And I was not good at that. I was the kid who rebelled against that and let my anger out because I had anger. I didn't know what to do with it. And I knew that keeping it inside wasn't good. But what we do with our toxic anger, when it comes out at people and it's accusatory or it's whatever, it causes harm. So toxic anger will always cause harm. But there is a healthy anger, and that healthy face of anger is acknowledging and realizing that it's your passion for life. Your anger is showing what you are passionately fighting for. And maybe it's a thing, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a change, maybe it's a change in your own life. I have to have anger to be able to accomplish the changes and the growth in my own life that I want, because it's me fighting for that life and for that more and that different that we talked about even on video number 1 in this series. And so healthy anger is the passion that you need to be able to move forward in life. And it really tells you what's worth living for and what's important to you. So in this phase of grief, just remember and keep in mind, your anger doesn't have to be toxic. You can acknowledge that you're angry and you can still move into the healthy side of anger. And maybe that's a new concept for you if you've been told or believed your whole life that anger's bad and that you just need to quickly manage, you need to anger manage. How about we just acknowledge we have anger and really deeply look at what we might be fighting for? What is the truth behind that anger? What is the thing we're fighting for that's maybe missing, that we're wanting? So this can be a healthy part of this grieving cycle if you learn to acknowledge it in the healthy side and not take your anger out on everybody else in your world around you, the dog, your spouse, your kids. And again, we all have these moments. However, if you can begin to acknowledge them, this phase of your grieving can actually be very productive and healthy for you. The third part of the grief cycle, the third phase, is bargaining. And bargaining is this thought of, if I do this or somebody else does this or that, then I won't have to suffer this loss. I won't actually have to walk through this. I won't have to face this uncertainty that's in front of me. And a woman named Melody Beattie, in her book, Codependent No More, I recently posted on Instagram about her book and reading it. I'm on my fourth time through it. Oh, so good. Highly recommend it. If you are somebody that really struggles of just being able to grieve and move forward in your life, maybe there's a reason. I know sometimes the title can scare people away, but I believe all of us struggle with codependence to some degree. And if you'll work your way through the book, you'll find some gold in it. But she talks about in this, about how bargaining is not an attempt to postpone the inevitable. It's an attempt to prevent it. So bargaining at this phase, it's all the little antics and the strategies and the things that we employ to not postpone the inevitable. We're not just trying to delay it. We are trying our best to prevent it and to avoid it at all cost. So this might be somehow, I don't know, your refusal to comply with something, your constant arguing, your whatever. It can take so many different faces in bargaining. And the important thing is for you to begin to notice how you are bargaining, when you are bargaining, and is it working for you? Is it actually working for you to not just postpone the hard thing that is your reality right now? Is it really working to prevent it? Because again, now we go back to the control thing. Isn't that another way we're trying to control, and control's an illusion? Does it work? Would it work? I shared my biggest season of uncertainty. One of them in my life was the loss of my son. And would it work for me? I mean, I did this. I bargained with God back and forth. And if I do this, just do this. And will you somehow I knew there was no way to get him back. And yet I still did this. I still bargained, believing that maybe, just maybe, there is something I could do that could change the outcome of this situation. Or stop the pain. I know now I came to a place of acceptance. Okay, my son Hosea is not coming back. Okay, new bargaining tactic. How can we just fly through this and not have to feel all this? Is there a way for me to just get through this without ever having to feel the depth of this pain and this loss? Or is there a way that we can work this out where this isn't going to hurt for the rest of my life? Like, how do I get through this? And so that is what bargaining can look like in one way. And that bargaining, once we've done that and realized, okay, it's not working, it's not actually preventing the thing I wanted to, prevent, it's just delaying the inevitable longer, it gives way to depression. And that depression, so this is, the grief cycle is widely known among therapists and other people. So these are not my terms. I'm just walking you through the cycle that's been out there for years and years. So depression is sadness, a deep and terrible and total sadness. And it can sometimes, I believe our sadness can sometimes give way to that depression. Now, I'm not talking about a clinical condition. I'm not going to get into all of that right now. I think we could look at this term that's been given to this stage of grief as sadness, as just a deep, deep sadness, because I do know that there are clinical cases of depression, and it's a state of being. And so what we're talking about here is just this deep and total sadness, which really is the essence of grief. It is mourning at its fullness. And again, I'm going to reference Chip Dodd because sadness is one of the emotions he talks about. Again, highly recommend you getting his book, The Voice of the Heart, because sadness, he talks about, it shows us the depth of what we really valued. And when we don't allow ourselves to get to this phase of grieving and allow ourselves to sit in the sadness, we actually are denying how valuable that thing was to us. You have seniors maybe that missed their graduation because of all the COVID-19 stuff, not feeling the depth of that sadness and that loss. It's denying such a huge part of something that was so valuable to them. We could go down a whole list of just ways that we are impaired when we don't allow ourselves to feel the depth of the sadness and the depth of that loss. How it impairs the things that we value. And so we look around at our life and we have to start to devalue things, and we begin to devalue people because we can't handle the depth of that loss. The only way to walk through it is to devalue it. It didn't really mean that much to me anyways. Oh, it's not a big deal. And in reality it is. And Chip talks about how the impairment of sadness is actually self-pity. We can get into this self-pity mode. And so the healthy side of sadness is truly allowing yourself to feel the depth of it and to acknowledge the value that thing that it had for you. So as we're talking about uncertainty and embracing uncertainty and the reality of all the uncertainties that collectively, as a collective world, we are facing, in addition to the uncertainties you might be facing in your own life, whether it's financial uncertainty, whether it's business uncertainty, whether it's relational, spiritual, all those things we talked about in video number 2. If the healthy thing in this phase is allowing yourself to sit in that sadness, as painful as it is, and journal and write about how valuable that thing was to you that you lost, big or small. And the ways you do this on a small way, a small scale on a daily basis, because remember, how you are in anything is how you are in everything. How you grieve the small things, how you are sad about the small things, is how you will be sad about the big things. And it's helpful to begin to notice how you do that. And when you've done that well, when you've done this sadness place well, you get to a place of acceptance. Acceptance is kind of the full circle culmination of this grief cycle. So acceptance is, let me tell you, acceptance is not forever. It's not about accepting forever in totality. It's about the moment. Doing grief well is learning how to accept moment by moment what is today. And that has been a huge growth area for me because I struggled to just, I'm such a future thinker. If you know the Enneagram at all, my mind is always like way down the road. I'm one of those 3 on the Enneagram out of the 9 different types that is much more of a futuristic thinker. And so getting to acceptance has been life-changing for me because it has taught me to stay present with what is. It has taught me that I don't have to accept the way it is today, that it's going to be this way forever. That is why, for me, I got so stuck in my grieving and I did not grieve well, was because my futuristic type brain was always thinking, oh my gosh, if it's this bad today, it's going to be this bad tomorrow. So let's just skip it all and let me deny it and just move to the future and try to make the future better. Instead of realizing, you know what? But doing that, I was denying my heart. I was denying so much of my reality, so much of the value, so much of the things that were being lost. And I was shutting my heart down more and more and more. So acceptance is being at peace with what is today. If you have to write that on a sticky note and put it on your computer screen or put it on your mirror in your bathroom, do it. Acceptance is simply being at peace with what is, period. Today, period. That's it. It's just today. Because the reality is things could change tomorrow. You could choose differently tomorrow. The world could be different tomorrow. And again, you'll have to go through the cycle again to accept what is tomorrow. But don't worry about tomorrow yet. Stay in today. Acceptance is the realization, finally, the heart realization. Not a head realization, but a heart realization and acceptance. And I would say revelation. It is more of a heart revelation that you are totally free. You are totally free to stay. You're totally free to go. You are totally free to feel all the feelings. You are free to laugh and you are free to cry. You are free to rest. You are free to work. It's when we get caught in this, I'm not free, I'm a victim, I'm stuck. That's what prolongs our grief. And it keeps us so in this place of not forward progressing in any way. And so acceptance, one of the marks of acceptance is such freedom. And if that sounds good to you, that sounds like something that you want and that you crave and that you desire, then I so encourage you to, I'm not saying snap, snap, chop, chop, get to acceptance. I'm saying grieve well. Part of embracing uncertainty is accepting reality. How do we get to the place of accepting reality? It is walking through all the first 4 parts of this grief cycle so that you can get to this place of acceptance. It's letting go. It's finally being at a place of letting go of all the things that you and I can't control and reclaiming all that you can. It's letting go of all the stuff you can't control and reclaiming all the things that you can, which are your choices, your thoughts, your reality, your feelings, all those things you can control. So if you're feeling anxious, it's reclaiming that anxiety and owning it and saying, I'm feeling anxious. What can I do about it? Instead of, I'm feeling anxious because this, and this, and this, and this is happening, and I'm going to wait until this, and this, and this is different or better. That's giving all your power away. It's giving all your power over to outside circumstances or people and letting them decide your internal space, your internal peace. And acceptance comes when you take back your power and you take back that stance of, I'm a victim, I can't do anything until this changes or they change, and say, no, I actually can, because I'm responsible. I'm responsible for me and how I'm choosing today. Don't worry about tomorrow. I'm responsible for how I'm showing up, how I'm growing, how I mess up. I'm responsible today for all of my mess ups. Gosh, I have so many mess ups on a daily basis. And instead of denying them, getting angry about them, all the things, I can just walk, I can actually walk through those stages in a healthy way about my mess up. I can go through the stage of grief and notice myself, ooh, Jenny, you just blew it and you're trying to deny it and cover up your reality. And when I do that, guess what it gives way to? Anger. Maybe I lash out at somebody because I can't handle how I'm feeling inside right now. I gave you guys that example with my kids a couple weeks ago, I think. I can't handle how I feel, so I need to make you feel worse. And then it's going to be bargaining, and then it's going to go into this sadness and this reality. And it's in that moment that I have the choice to go, oh, Jenny, you blew that. You're not a failure, but you did mess up. And there's a better way here. There is a better way through this mistake. And so I can accept what is. I can accept what is in this moment, that I made that mistake. That's one example I'm walking you through the cycle with. It could be you have a big loss at work or a small loss at work. I mean, this is the homework for you this week. This is what I want you to take away from this, is I want you to practice noticing the grief cycle at work in your life. How is it not at your job, but how is it at work in your life right now, in the small things? I want you to begin to notice all the small ways, the grief cycles at work. Notice where you're getting stuck. Are you getting stuck in denial? Are you getting stuck in anger? Journal about it, write about it. I go for runs a lot on the weekend, so I do more of a high intensity sprint style training, and then once on the weekend, usually I'll hit the trails because it is such a happy place for me. It's such a reset for me. And as I run, a lot of times I'll journal. How do you do that, Jenny? I know it sounds crazy, but I keep a note open while I'm running, and I have wireless, Bluetooth headphones on. And so while I'm running, I just hit my little thing and I'll start talking as a thought comes. And this has been such an awesome way. Some of you might be going, oh my gosh, if I run, I can't talk. That's okay. However works for you. Go for a walk and do the same thing. Walk, keep your eyes up, enjoy creation, enjoy the beauty of it. And as those thoughts start to come and you're noticing things about yourself, maximize your time. Open a note and just talk it out. Don't worry about punctuation. Don't worry about your paragraph indentations. Don't worry about any of it. Just get it out and say, you know what? These are the things I'm noticing about myself. And a great thing to notice is when you're angry. When you're angry, ask yourself, is there something that you need to grieve that you're not grieving and you're stuck in anger because of it? And how can you move through these things to get to this place of acceptance with whatever it is that you're angry about? Justified or unjustified, rational or irrational, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You feel angry. Your anger is yours and you're free to feel it, but notice it. Notice where you're at with it all. Okay, so that's your homework of just noticing the grief cycle, noticing the bigger small things that you're grieving and how you're showing up in that grief, and notice the broken records that go through your head. This is the last thing I'll say. Notice the statements you might say that this is just the way it is, it'll always be this way, or that's just life, or I don't care, or do you say it's not a big deal, it's not a big deal? That's one I do. When I'm really hurt and I'm really angry, I'll say it's not a big deal. And it's my immediate way of protecting my heart and denying how bad this hurts. I'll say, it's not a big deal. And really what I'm telling you is, it's a huge deal. I'm just scared to look at it. I'm scared to feel it. I'm scared to grieve it. And I'm scared to accept it sometimes. And so those are things that I've been noticing in my journaling this week. I would love to hear from you. What are the things that you're noticing? Do the work, guys. This is amazing work. This is the work that we get to do that sets our hearts free.